Hello and welcome to another video. In this opportunity we're gonna continue talking about some tips on how to draw a bicycle on perspective. And as you can see, I'm starting to draw a box in perspective. You can see that I have 3 vanishing points. It's a 3-point perspective, and one of the vanishing points, which represents the vertical line, I draw it in red, and immediately I start drawing the head tube of the bicycle and the bicycle fork aligned to that vanishing point, which represents the vertical line. But this is a mistake. Remember that the bicycle fork and the head tube are usually inclined backwards. If you look at a picture of a bicycle in orthographic view, you can see that the fork of the bicycle is not perpendicular to the ground. It is actually tilted backwards. So in this case, if we have our vertical vanishing point, which is represented by the red line, we have to draw our fork and our head tube inclined or tilted with respect to that vanishing point. We cannot align it to that vanishing point because it is not completely perpendicular. It is tilted backwards. So in this case, the vanishing point is a reference of what is vertical, because our fork is not vertical, so it cannot be aligned in the same direction as the red line. It has to be tilted backwards. So here you can see a comparison of the correct way and the wrong way of drawing the bicycle fork with respect to the vertical line of the perspective. And if we move on with the seat tube, it is actually much easier once you have the bicycle fork already drawn, because it is usually a parallel line. The seat tube usually goes in the same line, in the same perspective, or in the same degree as the bicycle fork and the head tube. So once you have the bicycle fork, drawing the seat tube is pretty straightforward. And there is one small element that, although it's very small, I think you shouldn't skip drawing it because it gives the bicycle frame its personality. And I'm talking here about the bottom bracket shell, which is another tube that just go transversely. So we have 3 tubes that converge. You have the seat tube, we have the bottom tube, and they have the chainstay. And all these tubes converge in one point at the bottom with another tube that just cuts through transversely, which is the bottom bracket shell. Although it's a very small detail, and I think that if you just draw the 3 tubes and you forget about the bottom bracket shell, the frame of the bicycle will not give you the same sensation that we want people to perceive when we show them a drawing of a bicycle. So I think it's very important to keep this in mind. Okay, let's move on to another mistake of drawing the bicycle frame. In this case, the problem lies on the bicycle chainstays, because I draw them parallel to each other and they are not usually parallel to each other. They start off very close to each other, almost like glued together. Then they start to spread out towards the back, almost like a V shape. Of course, not all bikes spread on a V shape. They vary from one bicycle to another, but in general, they all spread out, as you can see in this other example. Another mistake that I noticed in my previous bikes is that the wheels, they look very flat and they're supposed to look more bubbly, and I draw too many lines, almost like I didn't know how to place the rim and how to place the tire so it looks bubbly, and how to make the rim look like a rim. So I just put many lines randomly and I didn't know what I was doing. So I decided to simplify the process of drawing a wheel with as few lines as possible. And in this case, when you're drawing the wheel in perspective, what I would do is to draw basically 4 lines. 2 lines for the tire, making sure that it's thicker at the front, 1 line for the rim, and another line for the inner part of the rim at the back to show that this wheel is in perspective. And the tire should grow thicker at the front. This way we show the bubbliness. We shouldn't be drawing a perfect cylinder, we should be drawing a bubbly tire. Let's see this other example. I was drawing the wheel, and sometimes you have this type of perspective in which the steering wheel of the bicycle is not perfectly aligned to the frame of the bike, meaning that the steering wheel is turned to one side or to another. This means that you need to draw the wheel in another perspective. So I believe that one of the simplest ways to tackle this issue is by starting off with the minor axis. So in this case, we have to identify the minor axis. What is the minor axis? Well, if we look at the wheel as part of the cylinder, the minor axis is like the spine that goes through the middle. So to identify the minor axis from a reference picture, we can look at the angle of the axle. Here you can see that the angle of the axle follows this vanishing point. So we draw it in that direction. Here, the minor axis of my drawing doesn't match that one of the reference picture, so we have to fix it. Let's do it right now. As you can see, I sort of fixed it, and now we can proceed with the steps we need to follow to draw a circle in perspective. So step 1 is identifying the minor axis. Once you have the minor axis identified, then the second step, or step 2, is to draw a perpendicular line that goes through that minor axis. This is the major axis. And the major axis is gonna serve us as a guide for drawing our ellipse. How are we gonna do that? We're gonna be drawing our ellipse, making sure that the top and bottom points of our ellipse are aligned with that major axis, meaning that our top and bottom points of the ellipse are both aligned with that perpendicular line. While drawing the ellipse, make sure that it is as wide as your reference image. Don't draw it narrow if your reference image looks like this. Remember that when the ellipse is very narrow, it means that it has a lot of perspective. As the image starts losing its perspective, it starts to become wider and wider until finally it becomes a 90-degree circle. A wheel at front view is a full circle, but as the wheel starts getting in perspective, it becomes an ellipse, and the more perspective, the narrower the ellipse becomes. Of course, this is a very superficial way of drawing an ellipse or a circle in perspective. Actually, you can make a whole tutorial on how to draw a perfect circle in perspective, but that would take a whole nother video, and I think this is the simplest way we can do it and still have quite good results. So please, if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments if there is something that you would do different or that you think you have a better way of doing it that is more accurate. Please let me know in the comments, and that's the idea for this channel, and see you on another video.